This is not a one department or one neighborhood city. It's one city. And with regard to what area you pick first, I think that people have chosen. I was intimately involved in the comprehensive plan for the last 18 months. I worked closely with Keith Honey, who was the chairman. I was the liaison and made every one of the meetings except for one or two. And I can tell you that your citizens have decided, because about 1,000 of them came to town hall meetings, another 2,000 or 3,000 were online and answering surveys, and they said, we want to see our tax dollars invested in two specific areas: redevelopment of downtown and redevelopment along I-20. When you look at what's going on the north side of town, that is capitalism at work. There's really no need for incentives. So when you look at areas of town that need it, I think our citizens have spoken. There's other opportunities, as Andy said, that arise as a normal course of business. But when we look at planning for the future, I think those are the two areas that we need to focus on. Thank you. The way you reduce property taxes is by driving up sales taxes. And how do you drive up sales taxes? Everybody knows the answer to that: more business. I want to have Longview be known as the most business-friendly city in the state of Texas, if not the country. You know, I've worked with the folks at Development Services for the last 5 years, off and on. And we've done a lot of things to improve the way things go on down there. You talk to the East Texas Builders Association, developers, and others, they will tell you there is just a 180-degree difference in the way we work down there. And the reason why is I jumped in there and asked to help the director to run it more like a business, and worked with him diligently to do that. He didn't really take my ideas, so I thought that we needed to make a change. The city manager agreed. We made a change. And since Michael Shirley and Ingrid Self have taken over down there, it's like night and day in development services. But I'll only be satisfied when we've got a great big sign out front in neon that says, "Welcome to Longview. We're glad you're here." That's the kind of environment I want to have. I'll work with LeadCo and the Chamber. I'll go anywhere, do anything to be an advocate for Longview to bring economic development to our city. Thank you. I'm not in favor of any tax increase. I go back to what I said a minute ago about increasing sales tax. That's my first answer. My second answer is we have plenty of money, as he said, in the drainage fund that can be used in some other things. And I also have a little bit of a problem with it being moved around the way it's being moved around. If we don't need it in drainage, let's maybe reduce the tax or move the money somewhere else. There's also some opportunities with LeadCo's 4B money. Now, it's a sacred cow to them, and we'll have to talk about it, and I hope Joe Bob's not going to throw something at me for saying this tonight. But there's opportunities to use 4B money for infrastructure, and we can do that sometimes instead of having to have a tax increase or float another bond. So there are a number of different ways that we can go about trying to fund the infrastructure, but we definitely do not need to do it with an additional tax. Well, before the crime spree, it definitely would have been number 2 and 3, but one of the things about leadership is you need to turn on urgent issues when they arise, so certainly crime is number 1. And I see a lot of nodding heads in the audience. It's the first thing on everybody's mind nowadays. So let's talk about crime. First of all, I want to tell you about what I've already done, but before I do, let's establish a couple of things here. This is a national problem. It's not a Longview problem, it's a national problem. We also need to recognize that our police department and police departments all around the country are feeling a little beat up right now. So as we begin the conversation about what can we do to change things, let's make sure the first thing we do is stick our hand out and shake the man or the woman that's putting the uniform on and protecting us every single day. Thank you. Now, one more thing. This is a citywide problem. It's not a South Side problem. This is a citywide problem. I'm pleased to tell you, as I've traveled around the city over the course of the last few months talking about this, there's enormous empathy. I mean, mothers all over town understand what it means for families to go to bed in fear for their lives. I've talked to people affected by this, the preachers that minister to them. They're frustrated. This is the human component, and the folks living in these neighborhoods must trust the police and provide the valuable information that we need. One of our PAR officers, Jeff Hall, was quoted in the paper over the weekend that we've got to have, I even wrote it down, crime prevention is a team effort. It's impossible without the help of ordinary citizens, is what he said. So how do we do that? How do we build trust? Okay, if that's the problem, then we need to talk. The only way I can build trust with someone I don't have trust with or don't know is to talk to them. So let's get the police out of the cars, park the cars, and walk the neighborhoods. The men and women in blue that I've talked to said that's exactly what they want to do. There's been some policy issues in the past that have kept them from doing that, and I won't get into details of that. But let's get the cops back on bikes. Let's get them walking the neighborhoods. And Carlos Samples was promoted today to assistant chief, and I like what he said. We'll know we've accomplished what we want to accomplish when a policeman walks down the street and the neighbor says, "There's Greg," or "There's Sue." We will have accomplished that. Let's talk, let's communicate, we can fix the problem. But going back to the police force, good news here. We lost one person to the oil patch a year ago. We just hired him. He's fully trained already. He's already on the street. There are 11 more men and women in the pipeline that will be in the streets by the end of the summer. So that's good news. With regard to bonds, yes, very specific use. We have a lot of debt already in the city, both at the city level and at the school level. I wouldn't really be inclined to move on bonds pretty quickly, although we have retired a great amount of debt recently, and over the next 2 years we'll have a lot more debt that will be retired that will allow us room, if we want to float a bond. And the most likely place that we probably want to look at doing with the bonds would be either another street project for some of the infrastructure or something related to the comprehensive plan. Other than that, I don't really see any need for bonds. So I'm definitely a small government guy. I ran on that 5 years ago. I've advocated that since being in office. I think, for example, we need to have the lowest amount of tax and lowest amount of regulation we can possibly have in government, because nothing steals capital faster from businessmen and women, as you well know, than high taxes and unnecessary regulation that causes you a lot of money to deal with the regulations. So that's my example of a small government guy. I think we can do things with government that don't cost money, that make life better, like the comprehensive plan. We're going to change the property maintenance codes so that these slumlords that won't fix up their houses where these folks are congregating and doing bad things like doing drugs, we're going to have them either fix those houses or tear them down. So that would actually have an impact on our city and doesn't cost a thing. Listen, I think this plays to my strength from a business perspective. The way I go about this is as I would in a business environment, that is, identify the problem. What's the problem? Well, I think we know already it's trust, whether that's the problem that's faced with the police force, we're trying to build trust there, or just trust across the community. Folks on the south side think the north side don't like them. Folks on the north side think people on the south side don't like them, to some degree. I don't think our city is as divided as some say. I'll look for things that we can agree on. I'll look for ways to unify, bring people together, find things we can agree upon to work on together, and stop looking for what divides us. Yeah, okay, we can always find something that divides us. But let's put all the people that are part of the conversation, all parts of town, preachers, businessmen, school leaders, concerned parents, and let's have a conversation and put this behind us so we can move forward in the 21st century and lead Texas. This is a long-range visionary document. And the best part about it is what I've seen is the attitudinal shift of the tone of conversation in our city. We've gone from, we can't do that, Longview's never done that before, to we can dream our future. And it brings great value to the city. And I've visited with other cities where they've had comprehensive plans like this, and they've gone from good cities to great cities. They talk about their 30-year overnight success story. We can have the same story 20 to 30 years down the line. Now, having said that, this does not bind our city. It's only a plan. And as your next mayor and council, well, there's a number of different ways we can fund this. Public-private partnerships, reinvestment zones, LEEDCO 4B monies. Sorry, Joe Bob. Philanthropy. I think the mayor can take the lead there. Administrative changes to the codes don't cost a thing. That's what I talked about earlier about changing the property maintenance codes. Listen, folks, this is my strength. This is what I enjoy doing, bringing people together, bringing organizations together, and finding creative ways to get this done. I have no intention of loading up enormous debt on our city to do this. It's a long-range plan. It's going to take 20 years to get it done. We can do it in a fiscally responsible way and move Longview to become a 21st century where people want to live, just like we do. Well, there are two that I would say. I touched on one earlier, and that's just a policy change to encourage the men and women in blue to park their cars and walk the neighborhoods. Again, I'll go back to Par Officer Jeff Hall in the paper the other day. He said the same thing. Carlos Sample said the same thing this morning. They want to do it. They're encouraged to do it. And I think we're going to start doing it. Another one is the very popular one, and that's the cops on bicycles. And I saw James Bray out giving somebody a ticket in front of the First Baptist Church today. So nice day to be riding a bicycle, wasn't it? So that was a very popular program in South Longview, and it's something we need to do. The reason why we don't do more of it is, again, the cops that we need. The cops that are in the pipeline, those 11, 12 new officers, that will make the difference. That will allow us to have the men and women that can get on bicycles and work these neighborhoods, get to know the people that live there, and again, build that trust and confidence that comes from conversation. So I said earlier that low regulation, low taxes are the way to go. So that's just a philosophical principle that I stand by. Again, Economic development drives sales tax, which drives more revenue into the budget, which makes it easier to balance the budget. I can tell you something I'm very proud of, and for our city administration, I've asked every year since I've been elected, tell me how many more people we added this year. Over the past 5 years, our budget has been relatively flat as a city, and we have 2 fewer FTEs than we had 5 years ago. So our city administration does work to run our city from a balanced budget and very conservatively, so we're not just adding people every year. So when you hold down taxes, hold down regulation, strive to make sure you run the city as well as you possibly can without having to raise taxes, that's how you spend less of your money and leave that money in your pocket. So sanctuary city, we're not a border city, but from the definition of what I know of sanctuary city is that you allow people who are illegal to stay in your city. So my answer is no. We enforce the laws here in this city, and that's the law of the land. At the same time, we can be welcoming to all people, whether they're from other states or other nations. As long as they're legal, they're welcome in Longview, Texas. With regard to welfare specifically, I'd like to see it go back to the way it was before the Great Society and Lyndon Johnson in the 60s, where back in those days, we took care of each other. Churches, nonprofit groups. It's probably going to come back to us anyway because the government's so badly in debt they can't keep funding some of these programs. They're pushing it down to the states, and the states are pushing it down to the counties. You ought to hear Bill Stout talk about all the money he's having to spend just on mental health that used to be handled by the state and the feds. So we need to have a compassionate heart about this, but here's something your mayor can do. Your mayor can say, okay, we've got this problem with mental health. How do we address that? Bring the groups together that serve mental health. I volunteered at Community Health Corps 3 years ago after another one of those horrible suicide massacres where it was a vet with mental health issues. I called up and I said, what can I do to help? And I've been working down there for the last 3 years. You'd love the things they're doing down there. I bet a lot of folks in this room don't know about the many, many nonprofits that deal with people on the street, homeless, drug addicted, veterans. 25% of the people that are homeless on the street every single night are veterans. That's wrong. We've got to reach out with compassion as ladies and gentlemen, whether it's a church or a nonprofit, and take care of these folks. That's not welfare. That's good Christian values. Thank you. Okay, so listen, folks, as a city, this is a 21st century, right? We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do an animal shelter, and we can buy a fire truck. We found that at the end of the fiscal year last year when we funded the animal shelter for all the right reasons because the citizens said that's what they wanted. And we found a way to get the fire truck. In fact, from that conversation, bringing people together, the budget director, the city manager, I was involved in it too, and the fire chief. We came up with a way so that over the next 10 years, we're going to fund an account where 10 years from now, we won't have to find the money for a fire truck. We won't have to find the money for an ambulance because we'll have this pool, and it's a fleet replacement pool, not unlike what the police do. And so 10 years from now, that's fully funded. With regard to what young people need, yeah, I agree. But the things that the young folks need, we want too, don't we? More retail, more restaurants, more places to go, more entertainment venues, things to do during the day, things to do during the night. We can do all this. Let's bring people together. Let's form a task force of the 30-somethings and ask them, what is it that you want? What is it you're looking for? Get involved. Do like the folks at Bourbon and Bow Ties and raising money for that great cause, Worlds of Wonder. The resources that we need are there. They are people just like you, people who care enough to come out tonight and hear what we have to say. The 30-somethings that want something, let's get them involved. Let's find out what we need and bring to Longview the things that our kids are looking for, because we want them to. Sidewalks are very important to me. We put down 2 miles of sidewalks on MLK and Foster. MLK and Cotton. And the reason why? Those kids walk to school. There's not a lot of moms in minivans driving kids to those schools. Those sidewalks got them off the street and safely, and done safely. Now, why don't we have more sidewalks? As it was explained to me from some of the builders I talked to, there was a time in the past where they put the sidewalks in and the city paid for the utilities. Then the city stopped paying for the utilities and the builders stopped putting in the sidewalks. We've got to find a way to come together, bring the builders, the developers, let's talk to our infrastructure people, our engineers. How can we find a way to support the developers as they're going in and building new neighborhoods to make sure that future neighborhoods have sidewalks? And as we go forward with our future endeavors for street repair and street upgrades, we need to make sidewalks part of that. It's a safety issue. Moms and dads all over this great city want it, and I think it'd be very popular. And I'm definitely in favor of sidewalks. So the short answer is no, I'm not. I'm 60 years old, folks. You know, if I'm lucky enough to serve you for a couple of terms, much less 3, I have no desire to be a 66 or 69-year-old freshman in Austin, Texas. All right, so I'm here to be mayor, and if I'm not mayor, I'll keep doing all the other things I've done to invest in this city since we moved here 13 years ago. Joined the chamber, got involved in the chamber. Was asked to be on LeTourneau's President's Advisory Council. We've supported LeTourneau every single year since we moved here. Habitat for Humanity, on the board at United Way, co-chair. I teach at Junior Achievement, I think I said it a minute ago, at all the school districts here, and I'm also on the board and executive committee. There's 4 or 5 other organizations that I'm a member of. You can look on my website and see what that is. But the point is, I've been a servant to you in so many capacities. In fact, I see a lot of faces out here that we've served together on these nonprofit boards. I'm invested in this community, and I wanted to be mayor. I have to admit, I ran for city council to learn the things I need to know to be mayor. What's the budget? What runs the city? Where do the taxes come from? How can we make taxes lower? How can we make development services better? I've learned the things I need to learn working with the department heads in this city, I think, to be a mayor, to be a good mayor. I'm willing to give the time. I have the time. I'm semi-retired. I can make a full-time commitment to be your mayor, be your advocate here in Longview, in Austin, in D.C., fighting for our rights, fighting for the things that you want for your families, for today and in the future. I'm dug in here. I said before, we got roots in East Texas. Longview's our home, and always will be. I don't accept the fact that City Council hadn't done anything. Again, I mentioned to you earlier that the police want to get involved. They know that this is get involved, get out of their cars and talk to people. There's a crime problem ravaging our city, but again, as I said earlier, this is not unique to Longview, Texas. This is a national problem. You know it. You turn your TV on, you see it. Doesn't mean we need to ignore it, and we certainly haven't ignored it as the City Council. Anytime the police or the fire department has come to us for any public safety request of any kind, Richard Manley has voted for it. And I can tell you, so is our council. So it's not for lack of resources that we're facing this problem we're facing right now. There's a lot of reasons, and we don't have the time to get into all of it. But we know what the solution is. We need to get into the communities, start talking to folks, build the trust that I'm talking about, so that when the cops are walking around talking to the good guys, the bad guys see them too. We can get them, we can tear the houses down where they're hanging out like roaches and run the roaches out of there, and we can make these communities better. Your council has been fighting for you. Don't think that it hasn't. I also want to thank We the People again for hosting tonight. But again, I want to thank all of you for attending. We've had a spirited discussion, and you've been part of the democratic process. Each one of you is the most important person here tonight. You know why? Because you're deciding who you want to hire as your next mayor. You are the shareholders of Longview, Inc., and you're picking your next chairman of the board, who will oversee the board, which is the council, who oversees the city manager, the CEO, and all the executives that report to him. So when you do the hiring process, you do 2 things, right? Interview and a resume. Well, we had our interview tonight. There'll be opportunities for more interviews over the next few weeks. So let's talk about that resume. I think there are 3 or 4 things that a resume ought to have on it. Leadership ability, business experience, time, knowledge. So let's talk about leadership. The mayor works with the council and the city executives, of course, but they also work with other mayors, county judges, senators, and reps to promote our city and our region for economic development, water rights, air rights, road projects, and so much more. I offer to you my leadership from a young age to the U.S. Marine Corps, corporate boardrooms, my own companies, and the last 5 years on your council. I hope you think I have the leadership experience for you to hire me as your mayor. Let's talk about business experience. The mayor oversees the administrators that operate Longview, Texas Incorporated, a city of 85,000, a budget of $165 million, and 800 employees. Longview, Inc. is competing in a complex world today in the 21st century against other cities in Texas, the USA, and sometimes other countries. The old ways of doing things will not work in this day and age. With 30 years of managing and owning multi-million-dollar businesses and selling highly technical products into the U.S. and international healthcare industries, I've worked in scenarios similar to what our city administrators are facing in today's competitive environment. I can help them navigate these waters. I hope you think I have the business experience to hire me as your next mayor. Time. The people I talk to get it when I say I can be a full-time commitment, make a full-time commitment to mayor. It doesn't mean I want to go down to the motor pool and tell them when to change the oil in the trucks. What it means rather is that rather than being my second or my third job, it's my first and my only job. And how can that be bad? And last again is knowledge. Our Longview Inc. is a complex business, and over the past 5 years I've invested tirelessly to learn how our city operates and work directly with every department head and executive on the team. So, we did the interview, you know my resume. I hope you think that it makes me the most qualified candidate from the field of potential hires who hope to be your mayor. But as I said at the beginning of the evening, I hope I've earned your vote, and if I have, I will work diligently to always deserve it, and I humbly thank you for your support. Please be safe driving home tonight, and thank you again, and God bless.